Welcome to the Happiness Jungle TV show. I'm your guest host, CamiBaker.com, and I have a LinkedIn local buddy. Brian Wallace and I met in Boston, oh gosh, about 6 months ago. A whole bunch of people came together to have a fabulous event, and we were on a panel together, and he has got quite the tribe and quite the following, and is just a bubbling personality. I'm so excited to have you on the show, Brian. Thank you for being on.
Grateful to be here, Cami. Pleasure. Sorry we can't do it in person, but hey, with the magic of technology, we can all virtually be anywhere.
Isn't that the truth? So, Brian, please feel free to share with our viewers a little bit about yourself. What do you want them to know about you?
Sure. So I feel like everybody kind of has like the little monologue of where they're from and all that kind of stuff. Short version, because feel free to go check me out on LinkedIn. There's probably hundreds of thousands of people named Brian Wallace. So Brian Wallace and probably the name of my company, NowSourcing, which should be right over here. Then you'll find me and you could read all about me. But I like to say that I've traveled the magic triangle that nobody else bothered to do. Born and raised in New York, kind of got sick of that grind, found my way to Louisville, Kentucky, and now live and work in Cincinnati, Ohio, and am known to go out to Boston and places like that once in a while. My background's actually in technology, and I found that, and I'm sure we all can relate to this, the promise of technology is fabulous, but technology working half the time and having to restart it and tech glitches, and it's amazing that we're even talking to each other right now, right? We love technology, and it amplifies our lives, and it makes our lives easier, and some days you just want to throw your phone right into the toilet because, oh boy. And I've made the grateful transition to being straight technology to being more of a creative technologist and into more of a marketing role, which I've been doing after I left my post in technology 13 and a half years ago. I've been leading the way in my own marketing agency.
Well, share with us how that whole thing started, because one of the things I love about doing the TV show and the radio show I have is being able to interview brilliant people like yourself. It's like I get free one-on-one coaching and learn from the best of the best and can share it with the world. So how in the world do you really implement LinkedIn, and how do you serve your clients with what you do?
Sure. So let's get back to LinkedIn in a second. Let's talk about what I do, but not like annoying salesperson, because nobody likes that guy. They're kind of annoying at parties. Don't be that person. Just, you don't throw out all your business cards like Ninja Stars or whatever. Can't even go to some of these anymore because, wow, just keep me away from that.
Amen.
I feel like there's a fundamental flaw with how people explain things in the world. And whether that's for my company where we make infographic campaigns or getting attention on LinkedIn or having TV or radio shows, a lot of times people, they're either too shy and meek and they don't get that word out there, or they're kind of too annoying and just punching you salesy kind of stuff. And both of those are really bad. And let's say maybe you've kind of balanced it out right. Even this doesn't work because people skip right to all of the solutioning, all of the product comparison grids. We're the Uber of this, we're like that, and everybody goes right to the end of it. But they themselves don't make decisions like that. Isn't that amazing? We don't make decisions based on data. If I say 3 out of 4 dentists agree that Aquafresh is the toothpaste for you, what's one of the first things that come to our cynical, most marketed to in the history of society's minds is, oh, they're probably getting a lifetime supply of toothpaste, right? So we can't even trust the data. Maybe you just lined up all your family and friends and you called it a research study, right? So a lot of that is fundamentally flawed. We don't trust data. We could get all political with that. People think that things are rigged. People are so afraid of the way data comes to us that we don't make decisions with it anymore, because all this stuff that's happening in the subconscious mind, locked behind the door in our brain, in our limbic system, lizard brain, a whole bunch of different words for the same kind of stuff, fight or flight response, primal emotional stuff. People make decisions based on emotion. And I've found through the years, there's almost like a 3-step process to get anybody's attention and change anybody's mind. Now, this is not a creepy cult. This is not mind control. And we're on the side of good and truth, okay? We're here to make people's lives better. But if you think about it, what I do, spending a lot of my day, whether it's for the business, for LinkedIn, for helping others, mentoring, whatever it is I'm doing, I'm basically helping people change their minds for the better. Which, again, connecting on emotion, having a story to back that up, and then picking the data points to back that up. I feel like is really what people are missing out on.
You know, that's interesting. I'm going to a conference soon, and one of the people who run it was doing a webinar yesterday with all the people who are attending, and we were talking about taglines and hooks. So
Yeah.
I'm stuck in my brain about how to leverage social responsibility, you know, and he said, well, tell me something about like a client. And I said, well, there was this real estate agent, we're doing a diaper drive because we're helping people that are on opioids. And he said, stop right there. He said,
Right.
how diapers and opioids built my business. And I thought,
It's
wow.
a great hook.
Right?
You're not going to forget.
And you're going to want to click on it, and you're going to want to listen in on that. So to your point, that's a very emotional thing too. How in the world would diapers and opioids help build a business? And when we were in real estate, we used to say that people buy on emotion and they justify with logic, but implementing it is so difficult when you're stuck in your own stuff. So we need people like you. Please tell more.
All right. So we mentioned LinkedIn. So let's jump into that for a minute. People think I'm a crazy person when I say what I'm about to say to you. And it's because they have the wrong frame of mind. I'm not here to judge. I'm not saying it's wrong, but it's wrong for what they're trying to do, if you feel me on that.
Yeah.
So I tell people, they're like, well, when are you going to sell? When are you going to convert? Blah, 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 blah. And I tell them, literally, I don't care if people don't know what I do on LinkedIn. And they're like, what do you mean you don't care? Like, aren't you supposed to give them your website and this and that? Well, of course you do, right? I mean, but the key is eventually. People are impatient. Again, it's like the annoying, salesy networker, evil networker that's just driving you crazy and you have to run away to the other side of the networking event. Being more interesting, I just have to sigh because you just table flip it, right? People need to think about how to be leaving an unforgettable, irresistible impression. So I just want people to follow me on LinkedIn. I want to not tell people what I do for a living as long as possible, have them learn everything that they are curious to know about me. And then they're going to be like, wow, you deliver value. You are a genuine human. You don't seem like a sociopath. Because I'm not. So, and have a little humor like that and be able to say things like that. So knowing how to say and what to say it and when to say it is also part of that magic, part of that mix, right? So really building some incredible content, not just being an also-ran bad copy of somebody else, being very clear about what you do on LinkedIn, and then just having an awesome profile. So that flywheel, now go the other way. People see the awesome content, they engage with it, they're like, oh yeah, look at Brian, he does XYZ. And then they read all about me, and then they book a meeting and sign contracts and whatever. I want to hold out as long as possible to tell people what I do, because let people come to you, have things be inbound, be a force of goodness and magnetic attraction. Have you ever seen on Goalcast or YouTube, there's a wonderful guy who gives a commencement address by the name of Dr. Rick Rigsby. He talks all about the wisdom of a third grade dropout, was the smartest guy he ever saw, and it was his dad. One of the things that he says in that speech is about influence. People in today's world have the wrong concept of what influence is. Influence has become a bad word because they add the ER to it. I'm an influencer. That means I sit on the beach and get paid to sit here with beer cans and my bikini, and it's all bought and sold and whatever. I'm not trying to diss the influencer economy, but sometimes there's some things that don't go so well, like the Fire Festival and all that dumpster fire, right? But true influence, not for fame and ego and falsehood, is a whole other thing. So Dr. Rigsby would tell you in that speech, I'm not going to ruin the whole speech for you. You got to watch the whole thing. But in this particular thing that we're zeroing in on and really tightening up, you build your influence to impact others. So I will add to that for the side of good and for the benefit of all, whether that is helping someone in a tough spot, mentoring, giving to them, selling them on your product or service. It's all the same thing. It's all pretty fluid in my mind.
I totally agree. And, when we met, and I was so honored to be sharing the panel between you and Q and a couple of other people up there, I thought, wow, like I don't even know what brought me here, but I'm just glad to be here. And just to see the thousands of people that are following you and watching your videos and things. Talk a little bit more about that. Like to your point, you're not selling anything, but you got all these followers. So How did all that start for you? How did you start to acquire all those followers?
So a couple of things. So I would say part of it is my background in tech, and part of it is when I started my company 13 and a half years ago, before I started doing the infographic stuff, I was a very early on social media agency. So I'd say I'm one of the few people that really understands the art and science, left and right brain. I really vacillate between both sides of it. So I know what makes people tick and think. I know how to influence people. I know how to be good, and I know how to just say it like it is. You will get brutal truth New Yorkisms from me. And people love that. I'm not a copy of anybody else. I'm very genuine. And I've been doing this for a long time. I've been professional on the internet for 23 years. So everybody who thinks they just discovered me on LinkedIn in 2019, I'm like, guys, I've been here forever. I've been watching the history of all these social networks. And I would say I have a certain eye for content curation. So if you go back, oh gosh, must be like a decade or so ago. And the site still exists. There's a site called dig.com. So back then, it was all the wisdom of crowds that would curate stuff and help find really cool links and videos and stuff. And if it hit the front page, you would get so much traffic that your server would crash. And back then, if you remember this, I see you smiling, so I'm sure you remember some of the stuff back in the day. There were 100 people across the world that controlled 50% of what would show up on that homepage. I was one of those people. So I just, and this isn't a brag, this is just, you're asking, what's part of the secret sauce of Brian? Let's see some of the backstage, right? It's just a tree behind me. But the other part of the backstage is I've just been at it a long time. I have some really good creative chops. And just like going to the gym, I exercise my creativity much more than most people do on a regular basis. So every day I just get better and better at this because the whole world is just feeding me all these concepts and topics and things to talk about. So I just know how to be interesting, but not just like trying to be interesting so I get a lot of views.
So yeah. I know that you're not about pushing or selling, and it's about attracting and having these great conversations, but we only have 15 minutes. So give us the goods. What do you actually help your clients to achieve? Like, who is a great client for you? Where are they when they meet you? And what's the transformation that you help them have?
You betcha. So I make infographic campaigns. An infographic, sometimes we need to redefine what that means to the world. That does not mean that I'm on Fiverr. We're not going to malign any particular brands or anything like that. But I'm not a cheap cut rate thing. I'm not a template. I'm an end-to-end solution where we combine the strengths of a research department or a research firm, a design firm, and then somewhere across between public relations and SEO. So we help demystify and better explain what a company does to the layperson and the core audience. Now, you said, what's a good customer? If any of you have ever seen Malcolm Gladwell and a TED Talk that he gives all about choice, happiness, and spaghetti sauce of all things, he talks about how there is no specific spaghetti sauce or perfect Pepsi. There is no specific perfect customer point. We have clusters that I would say are really good. So a lot of the Fortune 500 loves to use us. Fast growth startups love us. And then agencies that want to do everything for everybody, but they really need us to kind of come in and do it. And then lots of other different things. I mean, there's a famous case where we actually got a basketball player a $64 million contract. Over the summer, he actually got a re-up 5-year, $180 million. It's pretty crazy. You're in Boston, in your own backyard. There's a big tech company called WordStream that we were instrumental in their early success. They actually got a huge acquisition. They were acquired by Gagnon for, I think it was like $120 million a couple years ago. So really being able to tell a story better visually, do that whole 3-step process that I said before, where it's emotion, story, and then the data, but visual, and then having all the chops and media relations really is some of the magic of what we do.
So when you talk about the emotional part, I've heard it been said that in our mind, no matter what, no matter where you live, no matter what country you're in, our mind is always asking the same basic questions. What is this? How does it work? Can I trust him? Is he lying to me? What does she want from me? What's this all about? Like all those basic questions that our mind asks. So you weave into the graphics, like to answer those questions to help people be able to say, okay, I get that. I see who they are. Yes, I want to move forward. Exactly.
You hit it right on the head. It's weaving all of that together. So things that are the sum of its parts, it's not 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. That's really what this comes down to. If you hired a bunch of different places, so break apart all the different parts. If you hire a research firm and they deliver a self-fulfilling prophecy where they get everybody in a survey to agree with you, or they write a 100-page white paper that gets tossed in the trash, okay, that's cool. But if we summarize the key points, we've taken the glory from that. Let's take the design part of it. A lot of designers are not pragmatic, practical business people. You call them up and they don't pick up the phone. You email them and they're out of office, hiking in the Pacific Northwest or doing their latest and greatest adventure. You're laughing because you've had that happen. But so we know how to be business minded. And because we've worked with so many different kinds of industries, we know all of the lexicon. We know the insiders. Maybe we're a little bit of a visiting outsider expert, a little bit, but pretty much every industry known to man ain't our first rodeo. And that's powerful. So design that's pragmatic. We're not trying to win an art contest and get a gold medal or something. We're trying to make that art to make the company money and get understood, right? To help delight the core and all the people that don't know about them already. And then that other part, PR, sometimes talks a good game and they say they have all these great relationships, but really they're just going on help a reporter out and they're blanket email spamming 1,000 people. That's not very helpful. And a lot of times PR is great, but if you're just writing 5 boring paragraphs and how would you like to interview the CEO? Well, if your CEO isn't famous and I don't have time to read 5 paragraphs if I'm emailed 300 times a day, doesn't matter how good your relationship is, you're burning that to the ground. So what if I said, hey there, journalists that we've known for a really long time. Here's this wonderful thing that will be your top story of the day, served on a silver platter, clear as day, beautiful visuals, and it isn't just words on the page. Who's going to say no to that? I guess some people, but it's got a better entry point, and it's got a better success story, and it helps them.
Well, to your point, there's so many different professions out there that have been watered down, is a good word for it, and whether it's graphic artists or coaching, for God forbid, all the people that are going to, all the women who want to help other women be empowered when the one thing they need is to be empowered, and all the marketers that say, this is the perfect way to do it, but then you find out they don't know what they're doing. What can someone who's listening and watching, obviously you work with really high-end people with a huge budget. What are a couple of things that our viewers who may not have that kind of budget, what should they be looking for when it comes to hiring someone like yourself?
Oh boy, do a little bit of research. Google the people, do some due diligence, right? So if somebody never buys a lick from me ever, they have tons and tons of stuff that I've written everywhere, podcasts, interviews. I have a podcast. I have a whole arsenal, an army of stuff that my reputation is out there for anybody to see. If you can't find through social proof and footprints and reviews and all that stuff, that's dangerous, right? So if somebody's selling you real hard, it means they're trying to just get you to not notice the sleight of hand as they pickpocket you. So I don't even know why you wouldn't look around. It is baffling to me. All these people, they're like, I just got ripped off by thousands of dollars because they said they're going to do that. They said that they're going to grow my Twitter following, but they have 17 Twitter followers. Well, isn't that your fault? Hello? Can't you practice what you preach? I know, okay, cobbler's shoes, blah, 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 but come on. Here, Jeff Bezos says something about your brand. He says your brand is what other people say about you when you're not in the room. Mm-hmm. So if I say a bunch of stuff, if I say I'm the fancy, trendy expert and look at the suit I'm wearing and blah, 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 you shouldn't really listen to me, right? I'm a truth teller and I'm telling you the truth, but a liar would tell you the same thing. So go see what other people are going to say. Now, the liar could go pay other liars, I guess, but eventually it will shake out. If you have somebody that's been quoted and is all over the place and it's not just sponsored advertising, it should line up.
To your point, people don't really pay attention to advertising, but they do enjoy good stories and good testimonials and good proven track record, as you're talking about. So another way to spin that, what are a couple of things that people can really kind of consider if they need to do their own kind of campaign? Like there's all of these, you guys are doing, just really phenomenal, really in-depth stuff and focusing on emotion and all that. What are a couple of things that people who are wanting to kind of at least get their stuff moving forward that they can implement when they're thinking about emotion? Do you know what I mean? Like, what should they focus on?
So a lot of people are like, okay, well, we don't want to afford you, so how do we make a cheap, crappy version? I'm like, don't. Save your money. I don't know. So I don't have like a good, like really low-end garbage version of what I do, because a lot of times people say, well, we're not ready yet. And then what they mean is, oh, well, we're smart. We could do it ourselves. And then they try and they do it for 6 months and then they hate it. And they're like, all right, fine, we tried. I'm like, dude, I know. Not right now means you're going to try it yourself and then come back to me in 6 months. So let's put that part over there. So let's talk about the other things that people can do to what I like to call set the table. I don't like to work with a lot of companies until they're ready. So if your website is terrible and it doesn't show up on mobile and it's not ADA compliant, you don't have social right, you don't know how to sell, and you don't know your sales cycle, and you don't have your CRM set up, and you don't go to trade shows, and you don't have an email list, there's all these things, right? Do you have customer service ready? Are you doing social listening? And I think a lot of people don't really understand their purpose and their voice and how people like to hear them. So people like the sound of my voice, right? And that's why I have the little podcaster mic. It's one of the creepier things people say to me on the internet. Hey, Brian, I like your voice. I'm like, all right, where's this going? Oh, you just like the way I actually sound. Okay, cool. That's neat. So whatever. I've learned to take it as a compliment. So after a while of lots of people saying that to me, I'm like, all right, I'll start a podcast, because if people like the sound and they could just listen to me on a short bit on a commute, I'm edutaining the people who are interested in following me, buying from me, spreading my word. That's why I can show up to a city like Boston, which I don't live in and I hadn't been in years, and I could draw a really cool crowd. And a whole bunch of my friends came to it. They left a big conference from other countries that they came there to come to us for the night. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, Inbound was in town. You compete with Inbound, and pulled them.
Yeah, to compete with Inbound's pretty hard. We love you, Inbound. Thank you. So, but I think people need to play to their strengths. You shouldn't be well-rounded. So I don't like accounting. I shouldn't go be an accountant. You don't have to go do everything. You should double down or 10x down or whatever multiplier down on your strengths. Right? I told you, I'm good at curation. I'm good at simplifying messages for people. There's certain things I'm not going to be good at, right? I'm not really handy around the house, so that's why I have a go fix it man, right? I didn't hang that up behind me. So there you go. I think that people need to figure out their strengths, and then they need to delegate that to the other pieces that they can't do that well.
I've heard it put this way. Smart, successful people will spend some money to save time, and broke, poor people will spend a lot of time to save money.
Right. Totally. And I think also just the default position of a lot of people is really scary to me. I believe in abundance and a higher power, and a lot of other people, and I'm not preaching religion, whatever, this isn't a show about politics and religion. You're going to throw me off, even though we got 4 minutes to go. So we're not going there. But when people are like small-minded and scarcity and everything's all about me, they don't understand it. So I'm sure we were talking about this before, and many of you have probably read the book or the series, The Go-Giver by Bob Burg. I actually just had him on my podcast, and he talks all about influence also. I think having a giving spirit and helping others also helps you. Oh. And nobody wants to bother dealing with you until they know how much you care about them. That's Zig Ziglar there. Right? People just do not embrace a giving mindset, and they're too greedy and short-term and small-minded. And I would suggest that they broaden their horizons. Even though they think it's not going to pay off, it always does, right? Would we even be on the show today if I didn't show that to you? If I didn't have that message and had it resonate with you and be reciprocal, we wouldn't. You and I right now connecting in this moment is proof positive of that. I didn't ask for this. I didn't say, hey, Cami, I'm only going to talk to you if I can be on your show. No, of course not. That would be gross, and I wouldn't be on.
Well, to your point about networking, it's funny. I literally wrote the book on networking, Mingle to Millions. Yeah. And the more networking events I go to, the more I realize really what a waste of time they are when there's so many other places to be able to build our business and build our resources and relationships and revenue. I like to say, talk about what you're doing in the world, not what you do. Stop. Exactly. What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? Who cares? What are you doing? Who are you being in the world, right?
Right.
Yeah.
How are you showing up? How are you living? That's what it's all about.
How are you showing up? So impactful. So we got 2 minutes left. You've mentioned a couple of great books and people that you've been on your podcast. Please mention your podcast, the name of it, how people can find it, and other places that are resources for folks to listen in on.
You bet. So for those of you who want to tune into the Cult of Brian through any sort of forum, like I said, I have a very common name for the internet, so don't just randomly search Brian Wallace. You'll find sports players and senators and marketers, and I'll show up, but it's just confusing.
Porn stars.
It's not really my line of work, but probably other people. Sure. So, not in this suit. That's a whole other show, Cami. So if you search Brian Wallace and the name of my company, NowSourcing, you'll probably find me at NowSourcing on pretty much every social channel there is. Admittedly, I definitely play favorites to LinkedIn, where you'll see a lot more of my content there. I do a lot of live streaming on there also. As far as the podcast, that's called the Next Action Podcast, which is at nextaction.cc. That's a 15-minute catapult into greatness. I don't want an hour-long show to hear everybody's story when I could have just listened to the same guest and 100 things before that. If you listen to episode 0, you'll hear my little manifesto about everything I don't like about the podcast and why I want to do this differently. So yeah, I think finding me on all those social channels, the Next Action Podcast, all my LinkedIn crazy stuff that's going on there. And of course, if you want to check out the business, that's at nowsourcing.com.
Well, it's just been an honor to have you on. I really appreciate you taking the time. Your words are brilliant, and clearly your content is magical. So thank you, Brian Wallace, for being on, and I'll keep following you on LinkedIn, and I highly recommend that everybody else does so too. See you on the next show.
Thanks, Cami. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much again.